And our next main stage event will explore the transformative role of workforce coalitions, unions, and socially conscious citizens in shaping a healthier and more sustainable environment within the film industry. And to speak to us more about that, we have Zena Harris coming back, the founder and president of Green Spark Group. We've got another Zena. Then Dagan Nish, safety advisor, Actsafe Safety Association. Hilary Bergshoeff, assistant business representative at IATSE, local 891. Andrew Williamson, Sustainable Workforce Coalition and program manager, ZEIC, that's the Zero Emissions Innovation Center. And our moderator is Justin Barnes of Real Green and the Provincial Film Commission. Come on up.
Hi again, everyone. Good to see this mic works this time. Thank you for joining me.
He's coming.
Yeah. I know it's the afternoon session of the day, so we'll try and make this engaging, as riveting as possible, but thank you all for joining us. Pleasure to join you, Zena, Andrew, Hilary, and Dagan. I wonder if we could kick this off with just a overview to you folks and how you came to the sustainability space, and just we could have an idea of what that journey looked like for you. Hilary, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Hi, I'm Hilary Bergshoeff. I use she, her pronouns. As stated, I'm one of the assistant business reps at IATSE Local 891. My sustainability journey is tied very closely, as I think a lot of ours is, to human rights and reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion work. As a very grateful settler in Canada, originally from New Zealand, we can't do one without the other. So I'm glad that I get to do a lot of this kind of work with 891 in my role now. So, yeah.
Dagan, you will go next.
Sure, thank you. Yes, so I'm Dagan Nish, safety advisor at Actsafe. My journey began, so I grew up in the Okanagan, and I was in high school in 2003 when we were devastated by a very historic wildfire, and it was pretty clear to me that, this was not going to be a one-off, that the frequency and severity of these events was just going to continue, and so it inspired me to get a degree in emergency and security management. And during my time getting that degree, I became more and more fascinated by the social kind of inequities that make disasters of that scale affect communities differently, which then kind of led me along more of a path towards working in service of the communities that are most devastated in those tragic times. And I've now found myself in this role of safety with Actsafe, which again gives me a unique point of interest for general health and safety, but especially in the context of climate crises.
That's great. Zena.
Hello, my name is Zena Harris. I am the founder and president of Green Spark Group, and I came to sustainability years ago, really trying to understand how organizations work, where efficiencies were. I studied it in grad school. I focused on film and TV. I moved to Vancouver and realized that it was such a rich hub for sustainability in film production that I kind of made it my mission at the time to bring people together to talk about this in various ways, whether it was at the organizational level, the production level, corporate, whatever it looked like. And so that's been a through line through my whole, I think, career in sustainability in entertainment, is bringing people together, trying to develop the workforce. This is why I'm so excited to be talking about it today.
Hi, my name's Andrew. I use he, him pronouns. I actually got into the film industry because I believed the medium was the message, and it was a really powerful way to create change. That was kind of coming out of high school, early university days. The last 10 years or so, I focused on making content with purpose. And shameless plug, we just released the trailer yesterday for Joy Haskell's documentary, A Salmon's Call, which tells the Indigenous relationship with salmon in the province. Climate change and change making can look a lot of different ways, and that's a powerful film coming to Knowledge Network in the spring.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Just for everyone's edification, my journey to sustainability began when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ecuador. I lived in a mud hut for about 3 years. with no running water or electricity. And that really set me off on my interest in international development at large, and worked through a number of different environmental and governmental organizations after that, which led me here to UBC to study resource economics. So very fortunate to be here. I just wonder if we could start with you, Andrew, about your intersections with workforce training and how you see that in the sustainability space. Like, what does that look like for you in a day-to-day?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So the last year, I've switched to working more full-time in climate change. I was getting frustrated with Netflix not wanting to spend money on climate change content, which may be a familiar story to some producers here in the room. And I was lucky enough to get hired by the City of Vancouver to kickstart their Sustainable Workforce Coalition that's taken a cross-sectoral look at sustainable workforce development in the city. Now, the program is with ZEEC, the Zero Emissions Innovation Center, where our mandate is more province-wide. And it's interesting to bring experience from a film industry and an industry I've been in since high school to this new approach to how are we going to find all the workers that we need to do the work that we need to do around emissions and this energy transition. And I think this panel might have been seated when Melanie and I had a good conversation about that, saying, why can't we bring this conversation to film? Because I'm here to tell you the film industry is so used to being ahead of the curve, and we are not ahead of the curve on this issue. People are doing this job in film off the side of their desks. These roles are not being budgeted, they're not being scheduled, they're not being thought of at the pre-greenlight stage of shows. Other industries are doing a far better job than we are. You know, there's vendors in the film industry pointing the finger to production and saying, well, they have the data. Production saying, well, the vendors have the data. We don't even have a reliable national footprint of our emissions. So we don't have a goal that we can work towards to reduce. So I admire Marsha's work so much with Producing for the Planet, and I'm on the board of that organization, and it really is a call to action for what we're doing in film. And I really think it starts with workforce. And as Jennifer said, people working on shows want to be able to do more. They're dealing with climate anxiety. So let's step up as leaders and show them what we can do together.
That's great. Zena, do you want to take a stab at this? How has your role intersected with workforce development and capacity training and in the entertainment sector at large?
Sure. So kind of building off of what Andrew said, we cannot make our content without our workforce, right? So if we don't invest in our workforce and their development in all aspects of their development, we will not thrive as an industry. And that is fundamental across the board. If our workforce is not healthy and happy and doing good work across the board, no matter what craft they are working in, or we will not have a thriving industry. And that is because it's so foundational. I took up this charge early on and started thinking, well, if we're going to have a sustainable industry, if we want this industry to thrive over time, then we need to figure out how to train our workforce in the ideas of sustainability. And one of the first things out of the gate was a program at Real Green teaching climate and sustainable production, because they have a window into or touch point into all aspects of the industry, being a hub here. So that is kind of where the seed was planted and then started to grow over time. And now I'm working with folks who touch aspects of several different industries. We all know entertainment is a collection of different sectors, right? Construction, food service, accounting, transportation and logistics, you name it, right? We all know that, we feel it, we see it. And so I'm now working with an organization that has a touch point into these various aspects and developing or have developed and starting to now iterate on and improve a certification for the entire entertainment workforce called the Sustainable Production for Entertainment Certification that actually legitimizes, gives one certification. Now the person has to work for it. They have to take an exam. They have to keep up those credentials. But this is legitimizing and kind of standardizing education around sustainability at a foundational level across all disciplines, cross-functionally within entertainment. And not just entertainment in film and TV, but I'm also talking about sports and music as well in those touch points, because there are lots of crossover. So that's where I'm really focusing my effort right now, knowing that our workforce is critical to the survival of our industry.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm guessing that this work came out of the sort of patchwork oversight of what sustainability looks like, and that there was no established baselines for what sustainability means. So
that's right. It's really interesting to kind of think about what was that next step. We know that there are a lot of different trainings out there. Some of them I've helped develop myself, and my team has, and all of that, and we've worked with lots of industry stakeholders on these things. But what we found after looking across the landscape of the various training opportunities out there in the world is that there are over 50 different training opportunities out there. And while that is great if you're looking at your local ecosystem, but when crews start working in different ecosystems or with employers that are working in different ecosystems, which all large studios are, how does one know what is the standard level of education that one should have, or standard level of knowledge? And so there wasn't one. And so we started taking the learnings from each of these trainings. Some are very specific, very topic specific, how to do a particular carbon calculator or whatnot. And we started pulling these together and taking the insight from the industry. We surveyed the industry and started understanding that no one was, we put some terms out there for folks to identify with what they might want to have in a training, but we realized that for every one person that selected circularity, there were 3 or 4 others that described circularity in a different way. There was no standardization. So how are we talking, how can we train the industry in a way where we all have, I can walk onto any set and talk about circularity and someone has an idea of what I'm talking about, right? That kind of thing, anywhere in the world. So that's what we were trying to get to. That was the goal.
Dagan, Hillary, I wonder what the labor organization's position on training and workforce support looks like. Do either of you want to take a stab at that?
From the labor point of view, buckle up, got lots to say. Respectfully, I would offer that we're almost the other side of the coin to what Zena's talking about, that as the education and the, I don't know really the right word, but that kind of coalescing of all of those different ideas and understandings of those words as we come to a more corporate understanding of what those things are, and that informs the bird's eye view of how we do our business. What we do as the union then is really hold that space between saying that we need to cut the carbon and keep the jobs. And we deal with a lot of fear and anxiety from membership, both on a anxiety about climate change perspective and climate anxiety that we know is a human challenge right now, but then also looking less at that umbrella perspective of that basic climate change lens to what it actually means to the worker on the ground. So for one example is that working with Catherine and other people, amazing people in this room from MBS, from Sunbelt, from Creative BC, have been able to put 150 people through training and panel conversations like this one and workshops of how to use portable electricity batteries, to use UPS generators, how to use tie-ins. So we're bringing our GenioPs and our rigging crews and our lighting department members not into a space where we're saying, okay, well, you don't need to have a job anymore because you're not running a diesel generator. Here's a new skill you can learn. Here's an accessible workshop you can come to that costs you nothing than an afternoon of your time and a willingness to ask questions and learn. And over the last 3 years, that has grown and developed. It's incorporated now members of the DGC from locations and from the Production Managers Caucus to broaden that conversation, but from a jobs-focused and human-focused worker point of view. And then the activation here, shameless plug for coming outside after this is done, to our activation over here, working with Nordwork. I know it's been mentioned previously today, but looking at what it means to replace standard building materials and incorporating cardboard into some of the production we're doing, that there are people that will say, okay, well, this feels like green screen, or this feels like volume production, this is big and scary. I've spent 3 years in the local saying, we're going to keep an eye on all of these new technologies so that we're the first ones who have workers trained in how to use it. When someone says, we want to build a set out of this cardboard, we already have people who can do that, who can look at an artist concept and say, great, this is the steps you go through, this is how we price it out, so that we are holding that space for workers to say, you've given your whole life to this. And for some of them, and I'm sure that Dagan will bring to this too, working with things like MDF and aerosolized paint and aerosolized plastic has cost them their life and well-being. They've given so much. And so these kinds of workforce development initiatives are intentionally giving back, both micro to the worker, but macro to our community and our industry.
Dagan, do you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, please. Yeah. So, yeah, we also kind of approach this from a different facet based on our role within the industry as a health and safety association. So our primary focus is on the health and safety of our crews and employers and supervisors alike. But of course, environmental health and human health are inextricably linked, and we saw that from the very beginning of the day with that powerful keynote from Zaya. Thank you. But yeah, so our primary focus is looking towards serving the interests of workers in the now, whether it be with regards to the exposure to hazardous materials or other practices that we hope to do away with, or just in the face of extreme climate, consequences, extreme weather, which is again becoming more and more frequent and severe as time goes on. We've also been a longstanding partner with Creative BC with the facilitation of the Real Green Sustainable Production Workshop. I believe the next one is October 23rd. Yeah, so I definitely recommend anybody who hasn't already taken that training consider that. The conversation has also naturally brought up considerations with mental health, and this is something that Actsafe is now moving very boldly into in order to build out our offerings for physical health and safety to be matched with considerations for psychological health and safety. So we're in year 2 of a strategic initiative to start to build that out in terms of resources and training. And to be frank, it's not dissimilar from the challenges that are faced by many of the advocates in this room, namely having to go up against systemic change and industry standards that have long since been established for 20, 30 years, and that there's individuals that are just fixed in their ways. Hearing the conversation or the description that Gemma gave about her interest in using cleaner diesel and just how challenging it was for her to come up against workers that are used to things being done, I felt her pain because I'm very much in similar challenges when I'm advocating from my position. And so there's so many inextricable links between the sustainability piece and health and safety, especially mental health and psychological health and safety. And so I feel Actsafe in many ways is working in alignment, and the more that we can align our approaches and our messages and our solutions, I think it'll be to the better of everyone that we're working to serve combined.
Yeah, that's great. So is it fair to say then, through the process of becoming more sustainable, looking at the fuel and the human impacts, that we're finding emerging ideas or issues that we haven't yet identified?
Yeah, and I think there's a powerful point too about reframing the narrative on this towards the benefits. I've heard this a couple times from some of the speakers today, and I try to advocate from that piece as well. Certainly there's a moral imperative for us to do better, but there's plenty of evidence and growing evidence to suggest that there's a very reasonable and identifiable return on investment from the bottom line. Never mind the fact that we as an industry are comprised of knowledge workers. It's fundamental that we are synergizing between so many different technicians and craftspeople, and nothing will sap the potential of that synergistic effort, like a lack of psych health and safety, like a lack of investment in sustainability. And so for organizations that are willing to take that step before it's regulated and forced down upon them, whether it be the combined outcome of all of those efforts or retaining that top talent that everybody's fighting for, I mean, all of that should be a mutual benefit that we really, I think, deserve to kind of put more in the spotlight in order to get some of the people that are still reluctant to take those steps forward to recognize that it really is beneficial, both financially, morally, and environmentally.
Right. So there's multiple benefits for changing the culture around the industry, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Certainly.
I just wonder if anyone else here has any emerging trends, things that they didn't anticipate finding in their work that they want to jump in on about how sustainability has revealed other things that look at this as something we also need to think about before we even think about reducing our fuel footprint.
Well, I mean, I completely agree with you in the sense that these are sort of fundamental elements of a thriving workforce, is investing in these types of programs for people across the board in every position. And just like we've had health and safety very much front and center, I love that you're also working on psychological health and safety, because it's pretty much fundamental. We cannot start thinking about other things unless we are feel psychologically safe in our work environment. It's just core. Anybody, any position, any organization across the board. And so, like, I love that you're working on it. Kudos to that. And I hope you talk more about that out in the broader world so that other jurisdictions can also follow suit.
Thank you so much. And you know, it's worth mentioning, being that I'm you know, the go-to within our organization for emergency management, I'm also the lead for a strategic initiative on psych health and safety. And so anytime I'm invited to any industry event to speak on one topic, the other topic organically comes into the conversation. And so that's again where I feel like any initiative from either front deserves to be aligned and synergized with the other, because one affects the other in so many ways. And so I'm proud to be representing Actsafe on the strategic initiative, as well as on the front of emergency management and sustainability. And happy to go to any industry event that anybody in the room is interested in having me a part of. For instance, Marcia Newberry was kind enough to invite me to be a speaker on Producing for the Planet's webinar this year on extreme heat and wildfire smoke within the industry. And that was an exciting opportunity for me to be a part of, and I'm always happy to be in more conversations like that.
What we call it in the labor world is whole person organizing. So when we look at a campaign, when we look at an industry site, when we look at somewhere where we're trying to affect change from a labor lens, is that you have to address the whole person. And so when we approach sustainability, when we approach mental health, emotional health, people say ESG goals, obviously, like it's that all of these language attempts to try and show the whole person being represented. A worker is not just a worker from 9 to 5 or from 8 till 4. A worker is a worker when they're thinking about their kid who needs healthcare, or their kid who has asthma and is constantly exposed to wildfire smoke. When they're thinking about their partner who doesn't want to shave their beard because they don't, and it affects their respirator fit and how much particulate they're inhaling. Definitely a true story. And in a work that when we can embrace the whole worker organizer perspective, it means that you can operate more fluidly and more quickly because you have an established values foundation that then can adapt to the conversation you're having with the individual when you're trying to find that common ground, and how you're going to say, okay, well, this is the moment that makes you change your thinking and say, oh, now I get it, is not going to look the same for anyone in this room. But when we do this work and we are training ourselves and developing the people that we work with, like as community, in that whole worker perspective, gives us that ability then to come from that place of a really solid foundation to then be able to shape those conversations in a way that means that you really have to then listen to people. You're not just spitting out, this is my spiel, this is what I've practiced, this is what I'm told my talking points are about sustainability today. I'm coming from a place of, this is a whole person who's coming up with a lot of things that they're thinking about, that they're living through, that they're bringing with them. I'm going to listen to them and hear. They're going to tell you already what their sustainability needs are. They know.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's employers and the setup of the project that needs to be listening more. I mean, it's great to hear what IATSE is doing on the ground with worker training and Actsafe for sure, and I think employers now need to take some responsibility to step in, because these projects get set up initially with priorities and budgets and schedules that define how they're going to roll out, and there can only be so much expectation on the workers to change things from within. So the Sustainable Workforce Coalition is actually partnering with Producer Clean the Planet and CMF and Telefilm and Creative BC to do a program that brings producers back to the beginning of the project timeline to say you need to do your sustainability objectives for the workforce when you do your budgets and you do your schedules. It's a system we all go through, add that extra piece in. You know, I had a producer complaining to me because their line producer did a budget for a sustainable documentary that had all this flights and travel and cars. And I was like, well, did you give them assumptions to work with? Like, did you set expectations around what the sustainability should be? That's not the job of the worker on the ground, right? That's how the project set up from the beginning. So we want to take producers back to that early stage and say, you need to be thinking about it now. You need to put those extra positions in. You need to support those training opportunities. You need to give everybody the tools to make the production more sustainable before you get into production, because as we know, once you get the green light and you start, it's too late. It has to happen before that.
And it's 100% an equity issue, because we know that 10 years ago, our average member was a 50-year-old white man. In 5 years, it's going to be a 40-year-old mixed race woman. And as that develops, as that changes, and it doesn't matter which lens you look at it through from an equity, diversity, and inclusion point of view. If you look at the most recent available census data, 27% of people declaring a disability, whether visible or not, based on what most people report in terms of perspective of how people think about disabilities, probably within the next 5 years, the Disability Screen Office is telling us that just people with a disability are going to be our largest underrepresented group. So the way we think about, and we know that some of those disabilities, especially to do with breathing, especially to do with the way that our climate is changing, are going to have a direct impact. And the people that are most susceptible are the people that are going to suffer the most.
Yeah, all that's really great. I'm really curious. Like what we talked about right now are sort of future-oriented things, missions, objectives. Where are we at right now? What does the current training landscape look like for each of you and your intersections and your programs with this topic?
I'm curious because Hillary, I totally agree with what you're saying about the opportunity to listen to crew members and what they want and what. So I'm curious. Where does that take place? How does that take place? Who's doing it? Is it the employer? Is it the union? Is it an industry organization? I'm curious about that, because what I'm sensing out there is that not enough of that is taking place. So if we can talk about successful models of that, how it's playing out, maybe we can, help spread the word, because I'm feeling that, folks are not okay out there right now. And I would just love to be able to kind of tease that out a little bit if we can. Sorry to take over your mind.
I think we're asking the same thing.
But I'm just curious. I'm curious. I mean, like, can we talk about that a little bit? Like, do you have any great examples of how that's played out, or what you think should happen? I'm just, and you too, Andrew, like, I'm really curious, because I do think that we're not addressing an elephant in the room, like that people are having a hard time out there. And if we want to listen to them, what's the venue for that?
I'm really composing my thoughts.
Sorry to make.
No, it's fine. It's because I know that my picture up there says Assistant Business Representative IATSE Local 891. So I'm being gotta take a breath here. So from the IATSE point of view, what we do in the Office of the Business Representative is a lot of our communication with our members is around, because of the nature of a local, and we can talk about union politics and structure in another workshop, because that's its whole own workshop. But we interact with our members primarily around bargaining. So we do a bargaining survey every cycle. We send out and give members the opportunity, whether they choose to take it or not, to take surveys. We also invite them to participate on member-led committees that are supported by the administration, because I'm not an IATSE member, I just work there. But so we provide support as the staff to members who want to affect change and take that ownership. So again, from a union lens, from a union point of view, a union is the members. That's why I'm really clear. I just work there because I'm there to support what the union is, what the members are driving for, the leadership they elect, the people that they choose to support, the way that they interact. And respectfully, I would offer that that's just one way of doing it. It's not perfect. Absolutely not perfect. We put things on our socials, we put things on our in our e-bulletin where we are intentional from our communications point of view, what we're telling almost intentionally sometimes to solicit a response. So sometimes it's just paying attention on social media, what members are putting on Reddit, what members are putting on Facebook, what members are saying out there, and understanding that, and again, this is with the union hat on very clearly, we're also part of a very large BC Federation of Labour, where there's a lot of members talking about the impacts of climate change, and it behooves us to listen more. I don't know if there are necessarily more tools needed to solicit those opinions, because people are anxious, you're right, people are not okay. I think it is more on us to actively listen. The tools are already there. And from your point, like, there's other people outside of us who also need to listen more, so.
Yeah, it's true. I can think of an example outside of the industry, but I think it relates to an experience that I had. I produced The Magnitude of All Things with Jennifer Abbott when we went to 5 climate change frontlines and asked scientists and activists and Indigenous people what they were thinking and feeling about climate change. And it was such an interesting way to sidestep the politicization of climate change. And when we released the film, it's a difficult topic to talk about. When you ask people what their personal example was, every single person had a story. I'm seeing cedars dying in BC, which I never saw when I was growing up, or Milton or whatnot. So what we're doing in the coalition is we're trying to find opportunities, and I think you're right. I think we need to do it, but I don't know where the space is. One of the coalition members is YVR. So YVR is doing a lot on the ground with sustainability, but they have workers that on the one hand see what the airport's doing for sustainability within its 4 walls, but then they go out onto the tarmac and they're seeing a jet plane. And there's some cognitive dissonance there. So they want us to work with them to maybe even bring the film in and just open up that conversation. The trick with the film industry is it's by and large offshore employers. So you're project by project, you don't have an employer in the province with an HR department who's gonna organize these things for a crew. And sometimes it falls to the union, sometimes it falls to WorkSafe. I don't quite know what the answer is, but I think you have to start by asking people just what you said, like, what are you thinking and feeling? And what would you like to see at work be done differently?
And respectfully, I would offer that cognitive dissonance is the key principle that we don't think about enough, because by its very nature, most of our people think of this as a short-term work. And it's not in rooms like this where you have to actually have that conversation that this is long-term work that needs to be done. But when they're thinking about the budget or the principles or the changes that should be made, they're thinking about it for 3 months and then they're moving on to the next one. And there's a lack of overall consistency and follow through. Great, we did really well for 3 months. Back to how we always did it, because they had a whole bunch of pictures and video that shows that they did it really well for 3 months, and you can use those pictures for ages.
Right, where's the feedback? Where's the lessons learned going forward?
Where's the accountability? I purposely didn't put my makeup on.
Where's the accountability? I just got the 3-minute mark here, so I want to open up the opportunity for anyone in the audience to post questions. I'm sure there's some burning thoughts, desires, opinions to come through. Gentleman here in the blazer.
Thanks so much. George Benson, I'm also from the Zero Emissions Innovation Center. So really appreciate, I hear a lot of this from Andrew, he's on my team, but it's so great to hear this from other folks within the sector. I think one of the things, Andrew, you said is that there's lessons to be learned from other sectors here. We talk about that, but I'd love to hear from the other folks on the stage here. What are the other sectors you're looking at, whether it's in terms of, Zena, as I understand some of the sort of certification and standardizing work you're doing, Hillary and Dagan, the work you're doing within labor and safety. Where are you looking for and saying there are some better solutions we could draw from here? Because within the work of the Zero Emissions Innovation Center, we're thinking cross-sectorally. Our job is to help decarbonize the entire region here, and we need to learn from everyone, because everybody has, whether we're talking about the supply chain of film or just all the sectors involved in climate change, it's all of us. So who do you look to for leadership and inspiration outside of your sector, if anyone? Maybe you don't, but I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. Yeah, so our position, Actsafe's position, is unique in that we are, we try to be an intermediary between all different stakeholder groups. So the regulators, the employers, the unions. We're not really meant to be strictly in service of any. We hope to serve all of them as much as by, products and services, as well as facilitating, important conversations and decision making of like. Our governance structures are comprised of industry representatives from major employers to major unions to third-party associations, and so we find many means of holding space to kind of get that information, to have those conversations be held between all these parties, as well as just even hearing from the students that come into our door and take part in our classes, and we get these important opportunities to really hear it from from them out of range of maybe their employers or other positions of power that might make them feel reluctant to really speak their mind. It's also worth mentioning that, within the scope of our organization, we serve the performing arts and live event sectors as well. And so some of the resources and training that we build are meant to be general purpose, but others are very kind of subsector specific. And so I get the fortunate opportunity to, meet with stakeholders from those different sectors and hear about what they're up against, but as well as what they're doing to solve the problems. And that gives me a unique opportunity to say, hey, you know what's going on over there? We should try that here. I just presented last week at the Arts BC conference, which focuses on those subsectors. Again, they wanted me to come to talk about psychological health and safety. It's very top of mind. And I was out at a Northern Exposure conference in Prince George earlier this year, talking about psych safety and emergency management. And so there's a lot of progressive action going on those fronts. Because there's a mutual understanding between employers and workers alike, which is a little bit not the same as what we're experiencing here in this sector. And through that work and through that communication, I'm also fortunate to see examples abroad. One that I'm most excited about is the Creative Recovery Network based out of Australia, which is doing groundbreaking work in bringing art into the response and recovery pieces of emergency management when you're seeing an entire community be devastated by a wildfire or flood. Arts BC is working very hard at retaining funding so that they can mimic that model here, and they're very excited to have Actsafe be a partnership with them if they're able to go forward in that direction. So yeah, we're in a very unique position in being able to take kind of the best of what's being done in all the different subsectors with the arts and entertainment industry.
That I think
Regionally and
that's
abroad.
it.
That's an incredible segue. Thank you.
Regionally and abroad.
I just want to thank everyone for being a part of this panel. I think we need to wrap up at this stage, but if you have any questions, I'm sure each of our panelists would be happy to engage with you at our mixer after this. So thank you so much.